Think of your favorite game, your precious, your baby. Now tell me something bad about it. It's not something we want to do, but it's something that we really should be doing so we don't end up like IGN or some random hater. Being able to identify bad things about your favorite games can help you actually justify why they're good in the first place. And fortunately, or unfortunately, depending on how you look at it, we're going to be doing that to Five Nights at Freddy's today. The entire saga. Obviously, I do not hate Five Nights at Freddy's, already made a couple of videos on it, but it's important to stay grounded. So I'm going to tell you one thing I don't like about each Five Nights at Freddy's game, usually the worst thing. Let's just jump right into it with Five Nights at Freddy's 1 and 2 because they have the same problem. You start the game, it's scary, it's tense, the atmosphere is great, the tone is great, and then you get jump scared a few times, and you just kind of play the game, and yeah, you beat it, that's about it. You can't replay the game. There's no reason to replay this game. Once the fear dies off, you've pretty much experienced everything there is to see in the game aside from the phone calls. Once you hear the phone calls and beat the first 5 nights, you're good. That's it. The game's no longer scary. There's no reason to play it again. Now that's to be expected from games of these sizes, right? Like, these are small little indie games. They're not meant to be as replayable as Elden Ring, but at the same time, it is a little disappointing to see. Because other than that, these games are great. In Five Nights at Freddy's 3, I wanted to say the jump scares, but I can usually forgive bad scares if the gameplay is good. Unfortunately, the gameplay is not good. The third entry in the series suffers horrendously from RNG gameplay. Springtrap's aggression level can make or break the whole night, and he just decides whatever he wants to do. Fortunately, the first 5 nights are usually considered pretty easy. He doesn't really go after you a whole lot, but that can also be considered a bad thing because it's like the whole game isn't supposed to be super easy. It's not until you get to Nightmare and Nightmare Aggressive mode that the difficulty really starts to ramp up. And then it feels like it's very luck based. I mean, there's things you can do, of course, to help you. There are methods you can practice and whatnot that'll help you win, but a lot of the time it really feels like chance. And that's saying something because the whole series actually kind of feels like chance, but we don't really associate them with chance except for this game. This game has really bad RNG. I already made a whole video on that if you want more details, so totally go check that out. In the fourth game, although I thought that the lack of a custom night was bad, that really doesn't matter compared to how annoying Fredbear and Nightmare are. They are so freaking hard to get a read on, dude. Like, they'll make sound cues all over the place, and I have no clue what is what. Even when I got to the harder nights, I didn't really figure Nightmare out. I kind of just got into a lot of really close calls and got lucky, I guess. But right when you think you know how he works, he'll do something completely weird and random that doesn't equal the sound cue that you just heard. It's just really mind-boggling, and he is just a pain. He's just a big pain. In Sister Location, we're getting a little bit more spicy here. We're getting some flaming hot Cheeto. In Sister Location, the worst thing is the very inconsistent difficulty. The nights are either too easy or too hard, with only one night that I consider to be pretty good for difficulty. That is night 3 with Funtime Foxy and the parts of the service for Funtime Freddy. But aside from those nights, everything else is either too easy or too hard. We know night 4, we hate night 4, I hate night 4, it sucks, too hard. Night 1, little tutorial, alright. Night 2, hold left click on a little door thing, and then pull the easiest like sound-based minigame ever with Ballora. And then Funtime Freddy, he's alright for difficulty, but then, you know, after that, you got Night 3, which is good, Night 4 sucks, and then Night 5, the final night, the climax, is too easy, man. Like, why is it so easy? It's supposed to be the cool part. And then Ennard is really difficult if you go to that secret room. It's not just gameplay I'm talking about. These difficulty spikes and dips are actually really important for the atmosphere and the scares. If something is too easy, you can't take it seriously and it ruins the immersion. If something is too difficult, you die too much and you stop caring. That was something the developers of Amnesia: The Dark Descent actually talked about when designing their AI. If you die too many times, the player will stop being scared faster. So although Night 4 should have been really scary, the difficulty completely ruined it. I honestly think this game could have been perfect if the difficulty were just fine-tuned enough. Because other than that, I actually consider this to be like one of the better FNaF games. It's got a great and heavy atmosphere that could work so well if the difficulty were there to match it. And it's such a shame. Pizzeria Simulator. I actually have nothing. And that may sound shocking because there's a lot of people who really don't like the gameplay for this one, but I am going to address that just so we have something to talk about. The Office gameplay. On the surface, it seems annoying, it seems unfair, but one big change this game made compared to the other ones is that there is no real limit on any resource. There's nothing that's really urging you to do things in time, right? You have to manage heat and sound But you can do that relatively easily, but you're also not on a time limit. You can take as long as you need to sort of get everything evened out. Push the animatronics away, get yourself cooled off, make sure the sound is leveled so they don't kill you really fast, right? You can do those things without a whole lot of pressure. Now, doing this correctly is kind of, you know, the difficulty curve. The difficulty curve is managing all this stuff, but you don't have to do it super fast and flicky like we've been doing in the previous games. There is no survive till 6 AM mechanic. It's reliant on you getting a task done with no time limit. So although the game does not explain a lot to you as far as how the animatronics work, which can be annoying, that is part of the difficulty curve, and they all work the same, so there's not really a whole lot to learn. For me personally, the biggest difference was I just wasn't turning the computer off. I thought it didn't really make a lot of noise, so I didn't turn it off. But I do genuinely think this is one of the better FNaF games as far as balance is concerned. And just because we were so accustomed to playing these games differently, we all thought maybe the gameplay was kind of bad, I guess. And to be honest, I don't give a crap about how Afton looks. Like, we're talking a franchise as weird as FNaF. Apparently there's enough people who care about that, but like, dude, really? Are we stooping that low right now? There's things to care about, and there's things to not care about. I put that into the latter instead of the former. Ultimate Custom Night. You could say it's not scary, but it's also not meant to be scary. So I gotta talk about the jump scare animations and the sound effects. They're pretty distracting. To be fair, there are a lot of animatronics in this game, so custom animating all of them and making sound effects for each of them, a lot of unnecessary work, so it makes sense why Scott did this. But every time you die, it is very distracting when a lot of animatronics have roughly the same animation. The sounds are ripped from older games, you just notice. Fortunately, the unique voice lines are there to sort of soften that blow, but when you get jump scared, it's I've said it multiple times already, but it's distracting, hard to not notice, and although I understand it, it does come off as kind of lazy. But still, respect to Scott for giving us 2 free games out of love for the fans. Help Wanted. This one's kind of subjective, and I try to avoid that when talking about literal criticism, like natural critique, but sometimes the difficulty kind of annoys me, not because the levels themselves are a problem, but because they're locking off content that doesn't really relate to those levels behind those levels. Like, okay, in FNaF 1, you gotta beat the first night to go to the second one. That makes sense. Now, certain levels that are locked behind other minigames, like that stupid Circus Baby plushie thing, stupid hunt nonsense, doesn't really make any sense. I am hard stuck on 2 levels, and I cannot play the rest of the content because I can't get past it. That is me, though. I don't know if I consider that a criticism. That is kind of how the game is designed. So, just as an honorable mention, the jump scares themselves are not very good. For a VR game, they're kind of pitiful. They're really quiet. They're always in this like black void thing, completely disconnected from your environment. So I don't know, the jump scares just really suffer. The environments and setup are really good, and like they actually scare me sometimes, but man, those jump scares are just pitiful. Security breach. Oh boy, you were waiting for this one, weren't you? There's a number of things I could say about security breach. Some of it I don't care about, and then there's performance and bugs, but that's easy picking, so let's go for something a little more substantial. I don't like the endings. Not the endings themselves, not the content, not the story. I'm talking about how they're presented. They're really fast-paced. They just kind of happen in this weird comic booky style, which is stylistic, it's cool, but most of the endings are animated that way, and actually I wouldn't even call them animations, they feel more like slideshows. It just doesn't feel very satisfying or climactic, to be honest, and it feels like the developers ran out of time. In fact, I believe they probably did run out of time. If maybe just some of the endings were animated like this, and then the others were naturally 3D animated, I could get over it, and some of the parts are 3D animated, like Freddy getting torn apart, rip my homie, and like the afting scene at the end, and burn trap thing, that's partially animated, but like, I don't know, there's just something about how quickly they happen that's mixed with their presentation that just makes them kind of disappointing for me. Honorable mention to the major size. The second I learned how to mod this game, I took it out. I highly suggest if you're playing on PC, you do the same. It'll make replaying this game way more satisfying. Can't wait for the DLC though. That is going to do it for me. Do you agree? Disagree? I'd really love to hear from you in the comments. Please subscribe if you enjoy horror analyses like this one. I do more in-depth analyses per game, and I also plan to do more in the future. Thank you very much for watching. Yeet.